So now we stay in Argentina. I don't know if Martin Tummino is there, world specialist of tiki mugs. I think Martin is not here today. So we'll move to Germany. We stay in wine with a fantastic presentation he had some years ago about marks and wine. Today it's about James Bond and cocktails. Huge scholar, university professor, an excellent person in the field of drinks culture. Thank you, Jens, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Eduard, for promoting me to a professor, which I'm actually not. So welcome to my workshop reading Neither Shaken Nor Stirred, Drinking Wine Like James Bond, which is going to be published next year. The title of my book may sound strange at first because Bond is known for drinking vodka martinis all day long. In fact, however, 007 drinks wine and champagne even more often. I've been researching why he does this and what function wine has, especially in the films. Wine is, for instance, used as a weapon. Villains are exposed with its help, and women are seduced with champagne. Last but not least, wine helps to finance the films. As there were some legal issues about the images, we decided to do it without any pictures, with this exception here. But of course, all of you may know Bond, so the pictures will appear in your mind as they're all well known. Anyone who has ever seen a Bond film knows the typical ingredients of the Bond style. 007 looks like $1 million in his designer suit and drives the most expensive cars. Of course, he always has a beautiful woman by his side and visits the most interesting, exotic, and exclusive locations with suave self-assurance. Producer Barbara Broccoli once described it as the Bond formula. Shooting a Bond film is actually totally different from any other film production. There are no cheap hotels or canteen food. All the staff, right down to the smallest cable person, sleep in fine hotels and eat in proper restaurants. Yaphet Kotto, Roger Moore's opponent in Live and Let Die, got so accustomed to champagne and limousines with drivers that he needed years to return to reality. Wine has been an essential ingredient of the Bond style from the very beginning. This is already evident in the first Bond actor, Sean Connery. He came from a very poor background, and when he won the role, he celebrated it with a glass of milk. In the films, however, he plays Bond as a very sophisticated wine snob who can taste that a sherry Solera dates back to 1851. He knows exactly where the base wines of a cognac come from and whether a sake is served at the right temperature. Bond is just as knowledgeable about butterflies and fish. He can operate any weapon and drive any vehicle. He's thus a superhero without any superpowers. So his wine knowledge defines him as an ordinary man with extraordinary abilities. And of course, it also helps him to do his job. In From Russia With Love, 007 recognizes a villain by the fact that he orders red wine with fish. And in Diamonds Are Forever, he outwits a villain disguised as a waiter because he doesn't know that a Bordeaux and a claret is the same thing. In For Your Eyes Only, Bond, now played by Roger Moore, becomes suspicious of his contact Christatos because he recommends the wrong wine for Bond's meal. When 007 wants to seduce women, he doesn't reach for a vodka martini, but for champagne. In Goldfinger, he's knocked out by henchman Oddjob while searching for the passion juice in the fridge to go for another round in bed with Jill Masterson. What follows is the iconic scene with the gold-covered corpse. You may all have that in mind. In the Roger Moore films, you can also see what happens if there's no champagne at hand. No champagne, no sex. It's as simple as that. In The Man with the Golden Gun, the fling was Merry Goodnight, fails because of a Thai sparkling wine called Phu Yak. And in A View to a Kill, there's no intercourse with Stacey Sutton because she falls asleep after drinking red wine. In the early Bond films, 007 usually drank Dom Pérignon champagne, but today it's exclusively Bollinger. Of course, this has nothing to do with a change in taste of the producers, the directors, or the actor playing Bond, but rather with product placement. The structure of the Bond books, and especially the Bond films, makes the series particularly suitable for incorporated advertising. To illustrate this, I would like to give a brief summary of almost all the Bond films, even though I only have 10 minutes for this lecture. The handsome knight defeats the evil dragon and wins the favor of the beautiful princess. That's the content of all Bond movies. If we already know exactly what is going to happen, the question is no longer whether Bond will defeat the villain, but by what means. Which horse, meaning which car, will the hero use? What armor, meaning what clothes, will he wear? What kind of weapon will he carry? And most important for me, what kind of food and drink will he consume on his mission? The message is pretty simple. Anyone wearing a Tom Ford suit, sporting a Rolex watch on his wrist, and holding a glass of Bollinger champagne in his hand can become a superhero like James Bond. Since my book will be published in German first, I'm also writing a chapter on dubbing, which will focus on wine, of course. I would like to give two little examples of how the dubbed version differs from the original. In Dr. No, Bond wants to smash a bottle of Dom Pérignon over a henchman's head. Dr. No replies, Dom Pérignon 56 would be a pity to break it. In the German version, Dom Pérignon 56 becomes Chambertin 56. At that time, product placement was still prohibited in Germany, and unlike Dom Pérignon, Chambertin is not a brand, but a geographical indication. The second example comes from Goldfinger. In the original, Bond tells Jill Masterson, my dear girl, there are some things that just aren't done, such as drinking Dom Pérignon 53 above the temperature of 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs. 38 degrees Fahrenheit is equivalent to 3 degrees Celsius, a temperature that is more likely to cause toothache than champagne enjoyment. Therefore, the passage is corrected to 8 degrees Celsius in the dubbed version. In Ian Fleming's books, Bond doesn't usually come across as quite so glamorous. In Thunderball, he shags a masseuse in the back seat of her small car and complains in a cafe that he has to pay extra for sugar in his coffee. At least we have Ian Fleming's personal recipe for scrambled eggs James Bond, thanks to the short story 007 in New York. The secret of Fleming's taste is quite simple, by the way. Lots and lots and lots of butter. The eggs are literally swimming in butter, but they're served with Tétanger Rosé champagne, and at least that is very, very Bondish. That's, by the way, the only image I was allowed to use, because this is a picture from our kitchen desk, and we prepared the meal ourselves. And by the way, this is not Tétanger champagne. It was the period of the Corona crisis, so we couldn't get any Tétanger Rosé in those days. It is Luxembourgish sparkling wine, Luxembourgish Crémant. But the color suits well. I would like to end this little lecture by quoting a scene from Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig Bond movie. And Ian Fleming's namesake novel was inspired by a visit in the Casino Estoril, which is right next door of this location. In the film, after being defeated at the poker table, 007 orders a vodka martini at the bar. When the bartender asks him, by the way, which no bartender in the world would do, When the bartender asked him, shaken or stirred, Bond's reply is, do I look I give a damn? Thank you for your attention.